Hey Reddit folk, I'm not a professional, so forgive the format. I just wanted to do a quick visual walkthrough of Dark Souls TRPG, since I'm not translating it, and I don't even have time to even dig through the rules, at least not for some time, or until a friend has time to run it for me over in Cafe Daydream in Kanda or something like that. I at least just wanted to just do a step through, because that takes just a little bit of time. All right. Anyway, so here's Dark Souls RPG. Just to compare it in size, this is the size comparison to a Lemmerchen configuration. Or, let's see, the size format has more in common, and I apologize for the glare, with other recent Japanese RPGs. So this is Shinobigami. It's about A5 size. So here's Shinobigami. The older version and the new version have the same size. It's a little bit thinner, but it's sort of the same, not huge tome, but rather small form factor book format. Also, here's some other recent ones that other companies have published, but it's become a quickly adapted format in Japan. A5, this is Drac Rouge, this is Deadline Heroes. Very simple one-shot, one-session games that are very, very cool. Maybe I'll talk about those at a later time. Anyway, but this format has succeeded recently for a couple other titles, and that's what Group S&E went with Dark Souls Art TRPG. To compare it against some other stuff, here's other stuff that we did. Ryutama, Tenorbancho Zero, it's A5, so if this is about B5, and you unfortunately I can't keep it all in frame, it's about the size, like what's Menseki? What's that in English? The area of one half of a book, but as you can see, it's thick and it has a pretty rich density of text. To compare it against other Western games, Godbound or Shadow of the Stern, which are freaking huge and don't fit in the frame. Apologies. It is just the Western RPGs in the paper or larger format. Just make Dark Souls dwarf in comparison. And I believe Shadow of the Stern, being European, is A4 size, and it's just just monumentally massive compared to Dark Souls. All right. So apologies, I made a mistake in the form. Oh, and just a quick thing. It's by Katoh Hironori from Group S&E. Group S&E is one of the few big RPG publishing companies. Recently, they've completely skewed off into doing board games mostly entirely, but they are, of course, responsible for Sword World and other popular games from way back in the day that they keep polishing up from time to time. And they also work with games that have rights and things like that. So that's how they're able to get Dark Souls TRPG. Okay, so quick walkthrough. And I'm sorry, one of the things I apologize for is I thought it was the format of like Draco Rouge and Shinobigami, popularized with Shinobigami and others in the psycho-fiction line, where the book is demonstrated by having the first half of it be a replay. In other words, a screenplay in text format where, GM says this, player, this character says that, blah, 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 and they actually show everything that they do in character, including side jokes and stuff like that. And then after that, the rules begin and explain how the game works. Same thing with other games like Deadline Heroes, that superhero game I just had. Draco Rouge as well, same thing. Replay at the beginning so you can understand what the game looks like. You can visualize it. And then the second half of the book is all the rules and stuff. I thought that was the same as this. I got confused by the form factor and I was thinking wrong. It's not like that. It is actually a rather traditional tome. It does not actually include a replay. It is pretty basic in that regard. So it doesn't do the replay thing that the other other modern Japanese RPGs do, although it does have the same A5 or so form factor. Beginning has a couple of illustrations and poetic text, but then it gets quickly into things like here's the vocabulary you need to know to play the game, here's how the dice work, stuff like that you would expect in a normal Western RPG as well. Then it goes directly into making characters and various tables and stuff like that, a few classes with skills. And again, I people will post later, and you'll probably find some translation by someone very active, likely in 4chan or something like that, that'll bust through and do it all. But I do not have time to read through and grasp the setting myself. I know very little about it, or excuse me, the system itself. I know very little about it, other than there's one sort of master PC, the other PCs kind of tag along, and if the master PC dies 3 times, it's game over. That's literally about all I know. Anyway, so after you make your character, they talk about the base rules of the game, complete with some flowcharts, which are popular. And this is kind of a cool return, which we saw in Tenra Bansho, but now we see it coming back a little bit. Rules explanations summarized with manga, which is really clever, and if done well, you can really speed up the rule absorption process, which I think is a really cool thing to use. But one of the cool things about Dark Souls that I understand is that it uses something that in kind of the RPG theory geek world they call fortune in the middle. I don't know why it's called that. It should be actually called fortune in the front. But it's basically where you take a bunch of like dice, you roll them. You don't say like, I swing and roll dice, or I dodge and roll dice. You actually just take a bunch of dice, you roll them, you look at the numbers that come up, you kind of sort them out into groups, and then determine, based on what came up in those numbers, what you do. Like, okay, I got a 6, a 2, and a 1. That means I can do this ability. I'm going to do that ability, that sort of thing. So that's how it works. That's actually something that became popularized recently in Drac Rouge as well. You actually roll the dice, you look at the dice, and based on what came up and how you sort them out, you can do various of your character abilities that are already set. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool system that way. It makes you think about strategy in a different way. But some more rules. And then the skill section begins. And then all the items, weapons first, etc., etc., etc. So there's lots and lots and lots of tiny illustrations. And I'm going through this quickly, for various reasons. I just want to show you the content, but I'm not going to do it in a way where you can like pause it and grab the book from it. So anyway, then the rest of it is basically setting. And as I mentioned in the thread, it's all Dark Souls 3, none of the Dark Souls 1 or 2. Around here is where this is actually a sample scenario. And then the back of the book, which has equipment, enemies, illustrations of enemies, but the enemy data is over here. And then finally charts with like levels and things like that. And then all the reference sheets. And then finally it says, hey, if you want to run a session where you don't actually communicate with each other, but just like in the video game you only emote, you can actually do that. But it's sort of kind of like a kind of a laugh and hard mode style thinking. And then finally the book does have a soft cover book cover with just a little bit of reference material here. And then the book itself, the front is actually a character sheet, which you can photocopy, and the back is the skill sheet. All right, so that's the walkthrough of Dark Souls TRPG.